Pels. They're down 0-2 to the Thunder. If at all, what can this team do to bounce back in this series?
Man, so it's a couple things they can do. I think that you saw in game 2, they actually used Jonas. He seemed to be the only person in this series who has had a clear advantage. So playing inside out was a huge help for them. He got 20 rebounds in the first game. The second game, he only had 7 rebounds. He had 19 points. He got to the free throw line. He's a clear disruptor. He can take away Chet Holmgren pretty much, who's been a weak side help for them. Now, I think if the Pelicans continue to use Jonas as a presence, and when I say play through him, I don't mean Jonas needs to have 20 shots. I literally just mean he can initiate they initiate the offense, get him involved, right? And then from that point, maybe he gets Chet in foul trouble. But at some point, maybe they'll start to double. And maybe B.I. gets more, he gets an open shot, or Trey or CJ. I just think that advantage can help the Pelicans a lot.
So what do you, as far as the Thunder go, you look at the box score, they're scoring too many points in transition, they're out shooting you from 3. Outside of that, what is the biggest issue for the Pelicans so far in this series?
Man, so look, the crazy thing is, right, the last game, it was a blowout. If the Pelicans can revert to what they did in the first game, which was muddy the game up, make it ugly. The Thunder, they play with a little bit more pace than the Pelicans do. SGA is probably the only person on the Thunder who likes to slow the game down. However, Jonas plays in the place that Shea wants to operate. He likes to shoot mid-range jumpers. He wants to get layups. I think if the Pelicans revert what they did to game 1, which in game 1 the Pelicans actually had more shots than the Thunder. They shot more total shots, and they shot 39 threes, right? So and they had, I think, more rebounds, they had more assists, they had more steals. If you revert to game 2, the Pelicans only shot 73 shots and they only shot 26 threes. They lost the rebounding battle, they lost the assist battle, and they had 17 turnovers. You're never going to win a game when you have 17 turnovers. And most of them were self-inflicted. I think it was 8 offensive fouls that were just basically from picks.
Now, Lito, go ahead, finish.
No, I was going to. So from that point, I mean, literally, you can't shoot yourself in the foot. If you want to beat this team, they're not going to beat themselves. They're the number 1 team in the West for a reason. And look, I'm just going to speak on the elephant in the room. Brandon Ingram has to play better. C.J. McCollum has to play better, but specifically, Brandon Ingram has to play better. I understand B.I. is hurt. I get it. He's coming off an injury. But the playoffs are all about guys, the guy, the dude, the dog, the person who elevates the team. And if Brandon can't do that, I think that. I mean, obviously, it's clearly an issue. You saw in game 1, he shot 17 shots. He was struggling. I saw, he wasn't his normal self. In game 2, it was more of a mentality for me because he shot 2 shots in the first half. He shot 10 shots total in the game. If that's your best player and we're playing through him, you're never going to win a game if he doesn't go all out. He's got to shoot more than 10 shots.
Yeah, no, he's obviously what makes this team go, right? Without Zion Williamson on the court, he's going to be your best player. We saw what made Zion so great. Everyone was calling it, the point Zion era. Ingram did that a little bit in game 1, but like you said, he was so hesitant in game 2. So outside of Brandon Ingram, you obviously have C.J. McCollum there, but which player do you want to see step up for the Pelicans?
Man, Trey has to get involved. You saw in game 1, Trey had it going. He was rolling. However, in the last 7 minutes of that game, he did not touch the basketball. He had 18 shots in game 1. Game 2, I think he had 8 shots total. He was 2 for 6 from 3. He had 8 points, 5 rebounds. Trey has to be the person. Trey is also a guy who can have an advantage just because of his spacing. The gravity which he operates on the floor with is truly a compelling thing for the Pelicans. You got to get him involved. You got to run more actions for Trey, whether that be backdoor screens for him, having him set the pick, to initiate the offense, or even having him initiate the offense, having someone pick for him. Maybe he gets a mismatch with, it depends on on Shea. Take advantage of that, or Jalen. They got the guys on the Thunder who don't really play defense, because a lot of the things the Thunder do, they let Chet basically play center field. Chet Holmgren is not a big man. He's just tall. You know what I'm saying? He's basically a 7-foot wing at this point. So how they play is a little bit unfair just because he can cover so much of their bases, but you got to attack it. And I think the thing with the Pelicans, you got to get more shots at the rim. Don't be afraid of Chet. Go into his body, create the contact, initiate the contact, draw the fouls. I think Trey has to get back on track with that. And most importantly, too, CJ, man. Game 2, CJ shot 14 shots, but he shot 5 3-pointers, which I believe has been a low in the last 7 or so games for him. CJ's been shooting around 8 to 9 threes. He's got to get back to that. And they have to be able to create some easier shots for CJ as well. He's got some tired legs, man. He's 33 years old. He's played upwards of 40 minutes for the last 12 or so games. And, that's never a good combination.
So, Lito, that kind of leads me to my next question, right? Trey Murphy was so good off the bench for this team, but without Zion in there, he's been thrust into that starting role. You go back and look at the box score of Game 2. You didn't get much production off of your bench, and they went 0 for 8 from 3 against the team that was hot from three-point shooting. Which player coming off that bench would you really like to see?
Well, I'll tell you what. So, Larry Nance had a good first half. I like what he did rebounding. Najee Marshall, I think, I want to say a combination of Najee and Jose. They have to play better because they provide the energy. It's something about Jose Alvarado, man. I've counted him out multiple times throughout the season. He's a gamer. He's a person who changes the pace for this team, because if you look at Jose Alvarado, he's technically the only point guard on the team. He's the only person who gets in the game, and he's a natural offensive facilitator. That's what he's done his whole career. So I think Jose has to play better. Now, look, it's been difficult because when he gets into the game, the Thunder, they've pretty much matched up. They've hunted him in matchups, which they've done the same thing with CJ. He's shot, has posted him, and gotten to where he wanted on the floor. I think Jose hitting some early shots, though, would offset that. Because I think the last game he went 0 for 5. And, he didn't give Willie a whole lot, so there was no reason to keep him on the floor. I would love if Jordan Hawkins could he got 5 minutes last game in garbage time minutes. I think with his shooting ability, I think if you gave him some early minutes, maybe he gets some early shots. See, the thing with Jordan Hawkins is, it's probably not going to happen. It's a pipe dream. But the thing with Jordan Hawkins is this. He is a known shooter around the league. No matter what Herb Jones does, Herb Jones shot 41% from 3 this season. No matter what he does, whoever's on the floor, Herb is always going to be the person that you let shoot. The defense is going to rotate a little bit different toward Jordan and Trey and CJ because they are known shooters of the basketball. So I think Willie he has people on the team. I mean, Matt Ryan is a guy. He hasn't played in a long time. He can shoot the basketball. 7 for 26 from 3 in Game 2, that's not going to do it. That's not going to do it in any game, in a regular season game, especially not in a playoff game. I think there are things that we can take advantage of still. I think the series is still alive. I know they're down 0-2, but you're still a game at home, and you're right back into it.
Yeah, for sure. And look, let's say, let's dive into that right now, okay? Game 3, look, you lose a close one in Game 1. Game 2, like you mentioned, it was a blowout. The energy and the effort that you really wanted to see wasn't quite there in Game 2. What do you want to see from this team Game 3, coming home in front of their home crowd? And, normally in a series, you're like, oh, good, we get to come back home. But this team's actually been better on the road this year than they have been at home. But what do you want to see from them inside the Smoothie King Center?
I want to see a team who knows its identity. I want to see a team who knows what it does well. Now, the Pelicans have to figure that out, because that's honestly been a question throughout the regular season for them too. Because there's an idea of the team had a great record at 49 wins. 49 wins technically shouldn't be in a play-in with 49 wins. It's just the West was so really stacked this year. The Pelicans have to figure out what advantage, what can we do well that the Thunder cannot take away. But most importantly, again, I hate to keep harping on this point, but Brandon Ingram has to play better. He had a comment after game one, which he said, I think Christian Clark asked a question. Shout out to Christian. He asked a question to Brandon. He said, with Lou Dort being as physical as he is, he's been in your jersey. What can you do differently? And Brandon said, let him do it. I'll be ready. Game two, he came out and he shot less shots than he did in game one. He was clearly not ready. I want him to stand on those words and be the player that we know he is. I don't think I'm asking for a lot there. He ended the game with 18 points. Yes, sure, but it's a different game when your best player is controlling the game. As you see, Shea do for OKC, he controlled the tempo, he controlled the pace. Brandon has to do a better job of that, being a maestro. The ball can't stick. We got to get better movement. To be honest, I think for me, if Brandon is gonna operate in the mid post area, he needs to start possessions there. There's a clear. He's a much better player when it's a 1-2 dribble situation and he can just shoot and raise over Lou Dort. Lou Dort is bullying him from the 3-point line onto the mid post area. If he starts the possession on the mid post, gets to his spot, just turns and shoots. This is a different game. He's already a rhythm. Brandon is a rhythm player. So if Lou Dort is gonna knock him off his rhythm, he is no way they're gonna allow him to do that. Now look, the refs have called this game. It's been crazy. Like I don't understand. Brandon is getting mugged out there. The refs have not done him any favors, but he's got to do himself some favors and just stay aggressive. Last point to that: if Herb Jones was allowed to play the way that Lou Dort is playing, man, Herb would be Defensive Player of the Year every year.
Yeah, 100%. He's should be already in that conversation. But Lito, one more for you before I get you out of here. If for some reason the Pelicans, they don't make the necessary adjustments and it is a quick exit here in the first round, do you stick with this core of guys you got, or could you see the Pelicans making some moves in the offseason?
Are you asking me personally or what I think the Pelicans will do?
I guess a little bit of both.
All right. So personally, I've been saying this since the end of last season. I don't think that Brandon and Zion mesh. You have two guys who do not play. Brandon is a perimeter player who does not take perimeter shots. And this is not a knock to Brandon. I think Brandon is a fantastic player. I just think the fit between him and Zion is not the best. I think Basketball Index put a tweet out yesterday saying that they put out the players in the NBA, the forwards in the NBA who take the bottom, the most difficult shots in the league. Brandon was number 1 on the list. Zion was number 6. You can't have two players playing that style of basketball. I think the Pelicans have to look at the film of what has worked and what has not worked. If you look at, I think the starting lineup this season across the board has been a net negative. So, a lot of things, a lot of information right there that they can divulge and do what they will. The data is there. I think at some point you're gonna have to put Trey Ingram, Lord. You're gonna have to put Trey Murphy into the starting lineup. I don't think you can continue to sit him on the bench. I also think, this is my personal opinion. I think you might need to move CJ. Just going into the season. I think he's turning 34 soon. I think he's done everything that you would have asked him to do. He's put eyes on the franchise. He has updated the profile of the team. But I think the Zion timeline for me is a little bit different. The Pelicans, I know people look at the team play, they say center. You need a center, you need a center. The eye test might not show this, but Jonas has been a top 5 defensive center in the NBA as far as protecting the rim. I know that sounds crazy, but he has been. The Pelicans need a guard. They need somebody who can create easy offense. Zion has to work so hard for shots. Brandon has to work so hard for shots. Trey has to shoot 40-foot jumpers just to get space to shoot a shot. You know what I'm saying? Like, these things are there. I think the Pelicans should. You cannot run the same team back again. You just cannot do it. It'll be 3 years in a row. Larry Nance is a good player. He cannot be a backup center. You lose a lot of rebounding when he plays. There's mismatches that you look at you look at the Jazz game. You look at the games you lost against Houston, like if the Pelicans win one or two more games, they probably would be the fifth seed. You know, like you avoid this whole situation, and that's speaking in hindsight. But yeah, like you cannot run the same team back again.